Hey, this is Jeff Lichtenstein, and you're watching JeffTV. So we're in Florida, but nobody's really from Florida. When I'm at a showing, I never see this hat. I always see a lot of this hat. These are your Yankees over here. A lot of people from the Northeast, from Boston, New York, Connecticut. A few people from the West Coast who mosey their way over here. And the Midwest, some people go to Florida, some people go to Arizona, California. It's a smorgasbord, but rarely anybody from Florida, and you can always tell when you're at a showing because you'll see people in different t-shirts and hats, and that's where they're usually from. Problem is, like in Rome, they don't act like the Romans when they're writing a Florida contract, and they really should. They expect whatever the tradition was in their state, that's how they write a contract up. Buyers and sellers both act this way. First area that's the most important thing, and I've seen people buy a house and where they really didn't intend to, is a contract in Florida. Unless there's an attorney review period that's specifically written in, it's valid. In other states, specifically more in the Northeast, this hat over here, in that situation in the Northeast, a contract goes typically from a real estate agent over to an attorney, what's called a binder. There are no binders in Florida. So if you really don't want to buy a house, or you're not sure if you do, you better put an attorney review period in, or you may buy a house, and I've seen that happen. Second area that's a little confusing, and it's most confusing for these guys over here, because on the West Coast, from my understanding, appliances are all excluded. So people take the refrigerator with them. And here, refrigerators, the ovens, chandeliers, window treatments are all included in the contract unless it's specifically excluded from the contract. A couple exceptions are washer, dryer, microwave oven, and anything else, built-ins. Those things need to be included if you're writing up a contract. Third area that's a little confusing is who pays for title insurance and dock stamps. It's actually negotiable in the state of Florida. In different states, though, have different traditions. Where we're at in Palm Beach County, typically the seller pays those expenses. They range about between 1.1 and 1.2%, but some of them are negotiable. Although in other parts of Florida, it's the exact opposite, and it's the buyer's responsibility for that. But I've seen sellers, especially, sell a house, and they think that the buyer is paying for some of the closing costs, and that's not the case. The last area, which really confuses people, is the closing date. There's something I know, and this happens all the time with the Yankees, is in the Northeast, the closing date they'll write on or about, or on or before. And in the Northeast, that's the way it is. The closing date can move around. And here, that's not the case. The closing date is the closing date. You have to close on that date. You don't close on that date, you're out of contract, and your deposit can be forfeited, and you can be sued. Buyer could be sued for specific performance. So you got to get ready to close. And it gets a little tight sometimes, especially if a contract's on a mortgage and there's a 45-day closing and the 30 days for the mortgage gets extended off. It can get a little hairy in there, but you got to be prepared, buyer and seller, to close on the date that's on the contract unless both parties agree otherwise. So when you're in Florida, act like the Floridians. This is Jeff Lichtenstein. Thanks for watching JeffTV.